Should get a gutter for that one. It is a rainy, drippy day today. So I think we're gonna go inside and pot up some tomatoes. Hi, it's Samantha with Clawfoot Farm, and today these tomatoes have outgrown their pots, and so we are going to pot them up and give them a bigger home. Here are our tomatoes. These are the tomatoes that we are repotting today. There are way too many here in the pots. They're getting crowded and they'll get stunted. So this tray is what we're doing today. Alrighty, well, I want to start with telling you just a little bit about the soil that I use. So I am a little bit unconventional when it comes to the soil that we use for our seedlings and just to start our seeds in general. Usually the advice given is to purchase your seed starting mix so that it is light and fluffy and gives your seeds a good start. And while that is true, so here on our farm, buying that much potting soil in the bags really would not be cost effective at all. Every time you buy something to bring in, it adds to the cost of the produce that you're producing. And so we really try to watch the costs that go into it. Our soil, we work really hard on amending and keeping really good tilth in our soil. So what we do is we just use our regular garden soil. It's not the dirt that is under the lawn. It's not the dirt that's just dug out of the ground. It is the same soil that's in our raised beds. It's in the same soil that I use in all of our planters and our pots, and it is pretty much compost. We amend our soil with our rabbit manure and aged chicken manure and other things throughout the year that we produce here, and it really builds the soil. And so our soil in our beds is just super healthy, and so that's what we use. So if my soil does not look light and fluffy, it's not light and fluffy. It's just good compost. So here we have some pots of our garden soil, and it has been raining, so it is pretty wet still, which is really great. And we're just going to take some tomato seedlings here. Let's see, I'm going to get one that's really big. There we go. And we're going to take some of these tomato seedlings. When I first plant the tomatoes, I try to plant about 4 or 5 per, these are 2.5 inch pots. And that works really well. You can divide them out and pot them up from here. This year, some of them have like up to 10, and we really need to get these separate. You want to repot your tomatoes when they start getting their first 2 true leaves. So if you look at this tomato plant, you'll see that these are their seed leaves, or cotyledons, and those are the first leaves that grow right out of the seed. These leaves here are their first true leaves, and actually this one's growing another leaf right there, so these are really ready to go. But this is a perfect time to transplant these tomatoes. They're a perfect size. Their roots are not growing out of the bottom yet, and they all have their first set of true leaves, and we're going to just pot them into individual pots. Now, tomatoes are a little bit different to repot than other vegetables and flowers because tomatoes are pretty resilient, and they also grow they can grow roots all the way off of their stems. So if you look very closely at a tomato plant, or in this case our tomato seedlings, you'll see little, their stems are fuzzy. So all of that fuzz on their stems, those are potential roots. Those are little root hairs that are growing. So when your tomatoes start growing a little bit leggy, which this one is a little leggy, there's a lot of stem before the leaves are growing, we are actually going to pot that all the way up to those cotyledons, and it will give this tomato plant a chance to grow new roots out of this whole piece of stem, and it will become a very strong and resilient tomato plant. Okay, so what we're just going to do is I'm just going to like squeeze my finger carefully through the top without hurting the tomatoes, and I'm just going to pull it right over and bring it out. And now you see that there's a good set of roots in here, and so I'm just going to tease them apart carefully. So you just you don't pull them apart. Teasing them apart is most likely the word. It will fall all the way apart, especially these are a little dry right now. So here's a tomato seedling, and you can see how long the roots are already. So this guy, you grab that pot. So this guy, this little tomato seedling in this pot, you can see it's ready to go into something that is bigger. So we're taking them from the 2.5, where they shared their space, and we're putting them into a 4-inch pot. So I filled my 4-inch pot with my soil, and then I also have a stick. You can also use your finger, and I'm just going to poke a hole right into there and drop that tomato right into the hole, and then just push it down and snug the soil right up against it. You don't have to press it very hard, but you do want you don't want any big air gaps in there, so you're going to just make sure it's snug up against your tomato. And now that big tomato plant now looks a little shorter and smaller, but now once it grows it will start immediately to grow roots off of that stem, and this tomato plant will grow so much more vigorously than ever before. So that's what we're doing with our tomatoes, and we're just going to keep on going. If you have a lot of tomatoes to do, like we do, you can just, as you separate them, I just lay them on top of the pots that I'm doing. Go. If they're tangled, you just kind of massage the roots a little bit, and they will come right out. There we go. Okay, so you just lay them right on the top. And then I come back and just poke each one of them into the soil. So I'm just going to use my stick, and it kind of goes a little bit faster as like a little bit of an assembly line. Because when you're repotting tomatoes and you have hundreds of them to do, it's a lot. Ooh, this is a good sized tomato. So you just keep on going. Now if your soil is dry, you're going to want to water them. My soil is very wet because I just dug it out of our garden beds today. Sometimes our soil is dry because I do keep a bucket of soil here at our potting station so that I don't have to go outside every day. But even if your soil is moist, a good piece of advice is anytime that you are potting, any plant, like as even house plants follow the same rule. They will go into a little bit of shock because we have just disturbed their roots. And when a plant goes into shock, it closes its stomatas, and those are the cells that will take in moisture. And so that's why oftentimes you will see a plant that has just been repotted get kind of droopy for a couple days, and then they will perk back up. A way to help them through that transition is to actually mist the leaves with water. But when your plants are freshly repotted, it's a good idea to just take a spray bottle and mist them on their leaves, because that will help their stomatas, those cells that are searching that let the moisture into the plant, that will help them ease the stress and open up those cells and take in moisture faster, and they'll recover from their transplant shock probably 50% faster. So it really makes a big difference in the growth of your plants. So when I'm done repotting the tomato plants or any plants, make sure to label them. This year, one of my goals is to make sure I know what tomato plants are where. I always start the year with good intentions, and then as I pot them up, I miss them and they get all mixed up and jumbled up, and so it just kind of becomes a like guessing game of what tomatoes actually make it into the garden. And so this year I am really keeping track. I'm keeping my popsicle sticks close at hand and my Sharpie close at hand the whole time. And so we're just going to label this and stick it in, and then add these over under the lights, and they'll be ready to go. These that we just repotted are black vernissage tomatoes, and they are just a really yummy, rich tasting tomato, good for eating, also super good in salsa. Well, I'm going to continue potting up the tomatoes, and I'll see you in a little bit.